Hello, my name is Arnold Key, and I've been sharing with you a series of conversations that I've been calling virtual coffee houses. But I'm taking a new tack. With a new series that I'm calling 5 Key Takeaways, I'm going to have my conversation primarily with you directly. And with a topic that I pick, I'm going to share with you 5 key takeaways. So this one, I'm going to call it college shopping. The objective here is to share additional perspectives on ways to choose colleges for application lists. I'll also share a few resources that you can visit yourself. Well, many of us cannot help but to focus on the prestige quotient of the nation's institutions. A magazine that we all know has made a national pastime of ranking universities. Truth be told, I actually met the originator of that magazine's methodology as we were both participating in an international summit on college ranking. What he revealed is that at the beginning, they simply wanted to sell magazines. It really wasn't about the so-called quality of the colleges themselves. Now, they added new factors over time, but the original motivations cannot be erased. Well, despite the origins of the ranking, it's clear that in certain contexts, our beliefs concerning that ranking matters. At the outset of the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, it seems plausible that part of President Biden's strategy in picking her was to choose someone who graduated from what are considered to be the top undergraduate and law schools in the country. His hope, I guess, or you could argue, would be that no matter how else she would be challenged, that her academic qualifications would not be among those challenges. Now, it didn't keep her from criticism or protect her from criticism, but you could argue that the criticism was focused on other issues, more political in nature, and not, again, focused on her academic credentials. So the For Unmentioned magazine builds notions of prestige with other kinds of measures like the number of Nobel Prize winning faculty on staff, or the percentage of students who were rejected, otherwise called their acceptance rate, or the median or average SAT scores. But there are obviously other considerations for college choices. Now, in the video that I'm about to show you, I had a chance to ask one willing patron of my favorite cafe the question, how did you decide which colleges should be on your application list? So take a listen.
So just in a few words, or as many words as you need, tell me how it was that you decided which colleges should be on your application list.
Okay. So I was a student athlete, so I also had a pretty good GPA. So I was looking to play football while going to school. I had some other aspirations on there as well, but they were kind of like secondary for going to school. So looking for somewhere I could play and somewhere I could get a degree. It's in my wheelhouse of choosing a school, and also not being too far away from mom. A single parent family home. My mom, myself, and my sister. So I definitely wanted to be nearby, but not like at her house. So I looked at a lot of schools in the 757, some of the schools in 804, so Richmond, Virginia Beach area, and even DC. So I looked at Howard, I looked at VCU, Virginia Union, Norfolk State, Hampton University, but kind of settled on a smaller D3 school, Newport University. Found that actually by my mom. She actually put me in for that program. It was somewhere just far enough away from her, but just still close enough that she could reach out and touch me.
Awesome. So yes, just to follow up, that list that you came up with, where did you go to find that list?
So in terms of that list, in our high school, we kind of had a list of HBCUs and schools throughout Virginia.
Yeah.
We also did a bunch of different college tour trips. I was also in Upward Bound, so they took us around, and they actually took us to Christian Newport College at that time.
Okay.
But by the time I got there, we kind of get Christian Newport University. Money was a big reason for where to go as well, coming from a single parent family home. Which school is going to give me the most amount of money towards my tuition, or which one of the tuition could be the cheapest.
Okay.
Hampton University wanted me to do ROTC.
Okay.
I had no desire to be in the military whatsoever.
Okay.
Liberty University wanted me to cut my hair. I had long cornrows at that time, and I was not going to cut my hair. So it kind of trickled down to like Christopher Newport University and Howard University. My mom had her own ideas about how Howard was. DC was a little different then.
Right.
I graduated high school in 2002, so yeah, it was very different at that time. So I went to Christopher Newport University. Mindset was a little different once I got to school.
Right.
But more focused on playing basketball and extracurriculars, playing football and extracurriculars. So I had to go into the military to kind of redo my undergrad.
Okay.
I got my bachelor's degree from Christopher Newport University.
Yeah.
Joined the Army as an enlisted soldier. Got an associate's degree from George Washington University in medical lab tech. Always knew I wanted to go into medicine, so I applied to some other programs. Got my master's at George Mason University, and then went into medicine. So I had to kind of choose again.
Right.
And I was looking more at Howard because I felt I would get more support there, given the rigors of things I'm going to face as a medical student, as a future provider. But at the same time, I already had this one here and her brother, and married, so I need to make sure I can take care of my family. So there's one school in the nation, the military, America's Medical School is a military program. Again, I wasn't thinking about going to the military, but they pay for everything. So
Right.
tuition's free, and I get paid a salary, so I have health care. So when I look at those kind of decisions, things change as I was going in upper levels. How can I support them while pursuing these higher level education?
So I'm grateful for his time stopping and chatting with me for a moment. And what you got from, or what I got from that conversation is that there were, again, a series of other considerations that he had when it came to choosing a school. So one had to do with, finding a school that had a good combination of athletics and academics, one that was close to his family. He mentioned wanting to be close to his mom, and the cost of the school as well. So he wanted picking a D3 school or Division III school, which tends to focus more on that balance between athletics and academics. But you can see how he made his choices. Now, you could argue that the kinds of colleges that should be on one's list is also a reflection of the kind of life that either the parent envisions for the student or the student envisions for himself or herself. In the case of this young gentleman, though, he envisioned himself in the medical field and is focused on the most affordable way to achieve that goal given his family. You saw his young daughter in the background. Now, the New York Times columnist Frank Bruni would applaud the interviewee's approach. Bruni is well known for trying to get parents to not get caught up in the mania of prestige, but to focus on the opportunities offered wherever one finds themselves. He's written numerous essays covering that topic, and is the author of the book, Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, an antidote to the college admissions mania. So that takes me to takeaway number one, and that is that typical national ranking leaves out other valuable perspectives. So if you listen to Frank Bruni and expand your thoughts about how we should be choosing colleges, that means getting to some other valuable perspectives. I'm just going to share a few. So that takes me to takeaway two, which is that when looking at other forms of ranking, you should be thinking, or I would offer that you should be thinking about both inputs and outputs. So the inputs are college attributes, and then the outputs are what I'm going to call resulting personal attributes. So these are the things that happen to a student as a result of having attended a particular college. It would seem obvious, but if you really key in on the way that national ranking takes place, you see that it leans most heavily on the inputs. So here are some of the other inputs: individualized marketing, let's say opportunities for research, green facilities, amenities, special programs. Others that I hadn't mentioned earlier include athletics, music and arts. So again, number of Nobel Prize winners on faculty. So again, so those are the inputs that colleges will often talk about. And you'll also see becoming part of the methodology for the ranking. Now, that takes me to takeaway number 3 and the outputs. And here's where I will also share some free resources for you to look at yourself. Now, one primary output to consider is a return on investment. So when looking at returns on investment, I found a couple of resources for you to check out. One is called the College Scorecard. This is done by the U.S. Department of Education, and it shows the median salary of those who started at the institution 10 years ago. Now, they also have other attributes to look at, and you'll see in the clip here that they do look at some of the other kinds of inputs that I mentioned earlier, but the fact that they include a median salary is a little different, right? It's another view, or looking at the end result as opposed to just, what they offer. Another report is done by Georgetown University, their Center on Education and the Workforce, and is called A First Try at ROI. Now, this report takes the idea of a median salary or an output, and they give a much more complex view of it. And so what they do is they look at the future earnings of individuals attending a particular college and take into account how much they are likely to make over a certain time period. And then they subtract that from what they're calling the initial investment or your college costs. So when you consider both of these things together, they come up with what they call the net present value. Now, that is a financial term that is, difficult to really conceptualize even after you read it. But the main goal here is to think about both the cost and the return that you'll get over a certain period of time. And when you consider those two together, it's a way of thinking about investments based upon the return, and not solely thinking about the cost and not solely thinking about the salary. So it takes both into account when you think about net present value. Anyway, both the websites for the College Scorecard should have appeared already, and then the website for A First Try at ROI should appear. I invite you to take a look at those and see how they rank colleges, because it's very interesting to see that. You'll see colleges on those lists that you perhaps wouldn't see otherwise if you stuck to the other ways the colleges are ranked. So now that takes me to takeaway 4, number 4, and that is a second primary output is the concept of social mobility. Now, social mobility can be defined in different ways, but the first way I'll show you is defined by the Washington Monthly College Guide and Rankings. Their website should appear below. With their report, they offer a different way of looking at outcomes. They compute what they call, their way of computing social mobility looks at 3 factors. One is the graduation rate, in particular, the graduation rate for Pell Grant students. And you might know that Pell Grant students are those who demonstrate exceptional financial need. It's a federal program. So if the graduation rate of Pell Grant students is high, what they're saying is that that institution does a good job of serving the needs of lower income students. Also, they look at salary. And when they look at salary, what they're looking at specifically is how many students 3 years after graduation make enough money that puts them at 100%, 150% of the poverty line. And so that's just how they compute it. A third factor they're looking at is the amount of student debt paid off after 5 years, namely looking at the people whose percentage payoff that's needed, and what's remaining out of the initial sum is less than 100%. So essentially, they're comparing schools based upon the amount of students who have been able to pay off a substantial amount of their debt. So with these 3 factors together, they are then computing what they're calling social mobility. So if you go to their site and see how colleges are ranked on their site, they're using that comparison, for those colleges. So it's very interesting. Yeah, I hope you do take a look. Again, you'll see like a different kind of sifting when you compare that, how they rank them to the other previous websites that I've shown you. All right, here's another one. So with this website, it's done by the United Negro College Fund, and it comes in a report called HBCUs Transforming Generations Social Mobility Outcomes for HBCU Alumni. So again, they have their own way of computing social mobility, and they use mainly, it's 3 factors, but the third factor is based on the previous 2. So the first factor they're calling access rate, and that is the percentage of students whose household is considered low income based on their parent or guardian's income level. So what they're saying is they're looking at how many students out of this student body come from households that could be considered low income. And then there's the success rate, and that's the percentage of those students from those same backgrounds defined as low income who attain a certain higher level of income than their household. So it's another way of thinking. Another way of thinking about it is upward mobility. So that's essentially what they're doing. They're looking at, the number of students who come from low-income households and the number of them who, by virtue of them attending that college, are now making more than the household that they came from. And so they compute their social mobility rate by multiplying the access rate by the success rate. So now, if you go to their website, you could see the report. Now their report is a PDF file, so it doesn't have search parameters like the other ones, but it's still very useful and still very interesting. And you'll see a list of colleges in there that they point to at being successful at generating social mobility for the students that attend them. So this leads me to my last takeaway, with takeaway number 5, and that is that we should not let quantitative rankings overrun or overshadow individual experience. Now, on the right-hand side, if I have it right, based upon how you're looking at the slide, but at the left, at the side, on the side of the text, let me just say it that way, you'll see what's called fufu. Now, I've tried this. It is a Ghanaian starch that will be served with a savory sauce like curry. So you would take those balls of fufu and dip them in the curry sauce and eat them and eat all of that together. It's very delicious. But what's interesting is that when you look at that, it looks like mashed potatoes, but it does not taste like mashed potatoes, nor does it have the same consistency. It has more elasticity to it and has a different kind of flavor. But the point here is that until you could look at something and think you know what it's made of and what it would be like, but you can't actually have that or know what it's like until you've actually experienced it. And you can't fully envision its potential unless you've experienced it. And the same goes for these institutions that we're talking about. So, we get caught up in the prestige based upon a numerical ranking, but until you've actually gone to these universities and experienced them in some way, whether it's visiting them, and hopefully COVID the release of COVID restrictions will allow more of us to visit colleges individually, or until you've gotten past the large marketing presentations that you might see if you do visit, and then there's those big presentations at the beginning. But talking to students that you see on campus, or talking to alums, or talking to other people outside of the marketing kind of experiences, it's hard to really know what it would be like for students. So to recap, number 1 was, again, to try to resist talking about institutions solely based on so-called prestige rankings. It will add stress to the whole process, believe me. 2, to consider both the inputs and the outputs. 3, to consider the return on investment based strictly on college costs and median salaries, which of course will vary by career choice. 4, to consider social mobility as another output. And 5, to find a balance between the perception of school quality, the benefits your student will gain during and after attendance, and the sense of fit that can only be known by experiencing some aspect of the college before enrolling. So again, I know how very difficult this could be, the whole college process. I went through it 3 times, if you consider myself and my 2 sons. However, I do feel like the work that we put in to make the best choice possible left us all feeling like we had gone to the schools that we were supposed to attend, if objective truth is at all possible in this. Now, I've just shared a few resources, but I hope they expand upon what you have probably discovered already, and at the very least, open up your conversations in a way that can make them even more fruitful. So thank you for listening. I hope you consider subscribing, or at the very least, consider checking out the next video. Take care.